In this video, we will learn how to add fractions that do not have a common denominator. Remember the steps that we have for adding fractions. First, you have to make sure that you get a common denominator. Then, you add the numerators, and keep the denominator. Let's consider this example. 3/8 plus 1/4. To add these two fractions, we will go through the same steps that we always do. First, we need to make sure that we get a common denominator. Looking at these two fractions, right now we see that the first fraction has a denominator of 8, while the second fraction has a denominator of 4. They do not have a common denominator right now, so we've got a little work to do before we can continue. First, we need to figure out what the least common multiple of the denominators are. Remember the strategy for finding the least common multiple. There are a couple of different ways you can do it. You can use the shortcut method, or you can list multiples of both until you find the least common multiple. I'm going to go ahead and list multiples of both 4 and 8. Until I can find a common multiple. Multiples of 8 include 8, 16, 24, 32, and 40. Multiples of 4 include 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. Now I'm going to look for the least common multiple, and in this case I notice that the first multiple of 8 is on both lists. So the least common multiple of 4 and 8 is 8. This means that I'm going to make the denominator of each of the fractions 8. There's nothing to do to this first fraction to change it because its denominator is already 8. So I'll bring that fraction straight down. This will remain 3/8. Plus, we need to change this fraction so that its denominator is 8. And we can do that by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by the same thing. To figure out what you need to multiply by, you need to ask yourself, what would I have to multiply 4 by to get 8? The answer there is 2. If I multiply 4 by 2, I will get 8 in the denominator. But whatever I multiply in the denominator, I have to multiply the same thing in the numerator. In the numerator, when I multiply 1 by 2, I will get 2. And when I multiply 4 by 2, I will get 8. This means that 1/4 is the same thing as 2/8. I have not changed the value, but I have changed the way it looks so that the denominators are the same. Both denominators are 8. So I've completed the first step. I have a common denominator. Now I go to the next step where I add the numerators. 3 plus 2 is 5. And I keep the denominators. The denominator is 8. It stays the same. I should check to make sure that this fraction is in simplest form. And in fact it is. There's nothing I can divide both the numerator and the denominator by, so 5/8 is the answer to this problem in simplest form. Let's consider a second example. Let's consider 1/6 plus 3/4. Again, in order to find a common denominator, I need to find the least common multiple of the denominators. So this means I need to use whatever method that I'd like of finding the least common multiple. Again, I'm going to list multiples of both denominators. Multiples of 6 include 6, 12, 18, 24, and 30. Multiples of 4 include 4, 8, 12, and I'm going to stop at 12 because I notice that as soon as I get to 12, I have a common multiple. That'll be the least common multiple. Whatever the least common multiple of the denominators is, will be the new denominator. This means that I'm going to be adding two fractions together, both of which will have a denominator of 12. Now I have to figure out what I have to multiply each of these denominators by to get 12. In the case of the numerator, or in the case of the first fraction, I need to multiply 6 by 2 to get 12. Whatever I multiply that denominator by, I also have to multiply the numerator by. In the second fraction, in order to make the denominator 12, I have to multiply its current denominator, 4, by 3. 4 times 3 would give me 12 in the denominator, and whatever I multiply the denominator by, I also have to multiply the numerator by. For the first fraction, I get 2 times 1, which is 2, and 2 times 6, which is 12. In the second fraction, I get 3 times 3, which is 9, and 4 times 3, which is 12. Again, I have not changed the value of these two fractions, I've just changed the way they look. This has allowed me to get a common denominator. At this point, the rest of the process is very easy. I simply add the numerators. 2 plus 9 is 11. And then I keep the denominator, which is 12. As with any problem when you work with fractions, you should always make sure that it is in simplest form, and 11/12 is.